Hey guys. Alright, so Algebra group, looks like this is going to be the norm for us for a couple of weeks. We're going to be taking notes through video. Unfortunately, we're just going to kind of make the best situation out of kind of not the greatest thing in the world right now. So, just kind of keep the world in your prayers, and we're just going to keep moving forward and doing our best because the school year is not over with, and we got a lot we still want to get accomplished too. So, if you guys have any questions, email me. Use my evdio.org email address. I'll even throw it up here at the top of our notes, just in case you don't have it. Once this video is over with, shoot me an email if you'd like. Just let me know kind of what went through your mind as we went through these notes. Let me know kind of if you liked them, you didn't like it, if there's something else, maybe I didn't do something in a way that kind of helped you learn the best. Kind of give me some feedback with it, because this is new to all of us, and we're all kind of experimenting a little bit right now. But anyhow, let's move forward, and we're going to continue Chapter 9. We're going to try and finish this chapter up, and we're still going to probably have a test over it. But we'll cross that bridge when it gets a little closer. So, Chapter 9, Lesson 4, Factoring to Solve Quadratic Equations. I think it would probably be a good idea to kind of on your own go through and make sure you kind of know what you're doing in lessons 1, 2, and 3. We covered those before we left school. So those should all be in your notes from whenever we were back still in session. We've done some review. You had a full week of review of those 3. And now it's time to keep moving forward. So we've had a lot of time in between now and then. So factoring to solve quadratic equations. Quadratic equation, we went through this earlier, but if you forgot, it was ax squared plus bx plus c equals 0. So this is the form that we're going to see a lot through this lesson that we're going to be working with. And this is kind of our general rule that we're working with today. I think you guys are going to like this lesson. I think it's a good one to hop back in as we kind of transition back into the school environment from break. So for any real numbers, a and b, if a times b equals 0, then a has to equal 0 or b has to equal 0. I know that maybe sounds redundant. Maybe I had, for example, 4 times 0 equals 0. Well, of course, we all know that, and we all know that one of these has to be 0 for it to equal 0 with one of our properties of multiplication. However, that's what we're going to be looking at as we factor some different quadratic equations today. So if x plus 3 times x plus 2 equals 0, here x plus 3, that would be similar to your a. X plus 2 would be your b. So if we multiply these two together and they equal 0, then x plus 3 equals 0 or x plus 2 equals 0. It's not and. Only one of these equals 0. Of course, 0 times 0 equals 0, so it could be, but more than not, it's going to be one of them. So whenever we come to our answers today, you have to understand that it's or. It's going to be one or the other. What we're looking for is, we're looking for solutions. So kind of a review, whenever we graph something for this lesson, we came with this curved-looking graph. This is what a lot of our problems look like. And this was called a parabola, if you did forget. The solutions to this parabola are where it touches the x-axis. So there's going to be 2 solutions, and those are those solutions wherever it passes through the x-axis. So that's what we're finding today. We're finding what the solutions could be. It's going to be one or the other because we know that the other one has to be 0 because it's passing through 0. So that's what we're looking at. Again, guys, as I'm going through this, it'd be a good idea to have your notebook out, be taking notes, and kind of go through this with me. If I move real quick, pause your video, write it down, unpause, and then we can go back. You can kind of follow along maybe a little better with this. So just kind of a suggestion. Let's move on to number 1. So on problems 1, 2, and 3, the quadratic equation has already been factored for us, and it's already been broken down into 2 parentheses. And it's equal to 0, which follows our rule of if a times b equals 0, then a or b is 0. Well, here we have an a and a b. It equals 0, so we know that one of these is 0. We want to find out what that other solution could be. So if I have 4x plus 1 and x minus 2, the way we're going to go about this is we're going to have 4x plus 1 equals 0, and we're also going to have x minus 2 equals 0. So we're going to set essentially both of our quantities equal to 0. And keep in mind, guys, we have an or in between because it's going to be one or the other. And then we're going to go through and we're going to solve for x. So on our left side here, I need to subtract 1. So I'm left with 4x equals negative 1. And then I divide by 4. So x equals negative 1/4. Go through on the other side. I add 2 to both sides. X equals 2. So with this being said, our solutions for number 1 are x equals negative 1/4 or x equals 2. And that would be your final answer. Moving on to number 2. Kind of keep our work separated here. We have 7n minus 2, 5n minus 4 equals 0. Same thing we did on number 1. It's equal to 0, so I know one of these quantities has to be 0. Well, I want to find out what is the other quantity that I have. So 7n minus 2 equals 0, or 5n minus 4 equals 0. And then I can go through and solve. So on the left, if I add 2, I have 7n is equal to 2. I divide by 7. So n is equal to 2/7. On the left-hand side, I go through, or excuse me, on the right-hand side, I go through this one. I add 4, so 5n is equal to 4, and then I divide by 5. So n is equal to 4/5. And remember, we have the or symbol in between because we're not sure which one is the solution without graphing, but we do know it's going to be one or the other. If we look at number 3 here, notice number 3 is a little different. We don't have two parentheses. We have 3x times the quantity, 2x minus 5. You can still look at this as, one, guys, as an a and a b. Your a being 3x, your b being 2x minus 5. So if I set my a equal to 0, I'm going to have 3x equals 0, and my b would be or 2x minus 5 equals 0. I go through and solve each one. On the left, I'm going to divide by 3. So anytime that we do a 0 divided by a 3, that's a 0. So x is going to be equal to 0. Or, on the other side, I add 5. 2x is equal to 5. I then divide by 2. X equals 5/2. So my answer here is going to be x equals 0 or x equals 5/2. Not too terrible. Again, we're just setting both of our quantities equal to 0 as we go through this. And again, it's important that you have this or sign in the middle because we're not showing that both of these are the solution. We're showing that just one of them is the solution. Alright, let's go through and let's look at numbers 4, 5, and 6 because these are very similar as well. I've kind of grouped them together for your notes. It might not be a bad idea to keep 1, 2, and 3 together, and then let's go through and we'll keep 4, 5, and 6 together as well. Real quick, as we kind of go through these. I did want to show you on the calculator, and again, everyone's is a little different. Whenever we graph these, and I keep talking about a solution, just like up top here, whenever we graph, the solutions are where it passes through the x-axis. We know that one of the A or the B has to be 0. And we're finding out, okay, well, it's going to be either the A is 0, the B is 0, we're not sure, but if B is 0, we know x has to be 0. If the A is 0, we know that x then has to be 5/2. If we come over and we graph it, so say I type this in y equals 3x times the quantity 2x minus 5. I just type this in exactly as it shows on number 3, and I come over and I hit graph. I can see that my parabola goes straight through 0, 0 here. So I know that x has to be 0. That has to be one of my solutions. So just kind of another way of showing kind of where we're going with this right now. Let's move ahead to number 4. So we have now x squared plus 8x plus 15 equals 0. The only way, guys, that this one changes compared to numbers 1, 2, and 3 is we need to factor it. That's why factoring is so important on our last chapter. So I want two quantities that I can break this apart into. Now x squared, I know that an x times an x, whenever we do 4, my first term is going to be the first two times one another have to equal my first term. So x times x is x squared. That's the only way you can get an x squared. And then my last term. Remember, I want to break apart this 15 into two things that add together to make 8 and multiply together to get 15. Those two are going to be 5 and 3. So I'm going to have x plus 3 and x plus 5. I can add 5 and 3 together to get 8. 3 times 5 gives me 15. So I know this is the right factor for this one. I can go through now, and I'm going to set both of my a and b to 0. So x plus 3 equals 0, or x plus 5 equals 0. Go through and solve. On the left, I need to subtract. So I'm going to have x equals negative 3. And on the right, I'm going to have x is equal to negative 5. So my final answer is going to be the solutions are negative 3 or negative 5. So these would be my two solutions here. This might not be a bad idea to, on number 5, as we've kind of seen the similar layout on these last couple of problems, to maybe pause the video and try number 5 on your own, and then unpause it and we can compare answers and see how you did on it. Alright, hopefully you went through and you paused the video and you checked them out. Let's go through and let's take a look at this one. Alright, so for number 5, m squared minus 5m minus 14 is equal to 0. Let's go through here. So I need to factor it. I know m only breaks down into m and m. Now I need to break 14 into two things that can multiply to get negative 14, and those two numbers then can be added to make negative 5. Those numbers are going to be 7 and 2. I need to make sure that one of them is negative because negative times a positive gives me a negative. I want my 5 to be negative, so I need my larger number to be a negative, so it's going to be m minus 7, and then m plus 2. Go through, set them equal. So m is minus 7 equals 0, or m minus plus 2 is equal to 0. So again, I'm just bringing them straight down, setting them equal to 0. Solve for m. m is equal to 7, or m is equal to negative 2. And those are then my two solutions. n is equal to 7, or n is equal to 2. And again, one more time, we can pull up our calculators. We can type in our equation into our y equals, just as I've done here. X squared minus 5x minus 14. I took this equation, word for word, type it in, go to graph, let the calculator kind of do its thing. We can see that it passes through at -2, and it also passes through over here at 7. So we have found where it passes the x-axis in both spots. If we go to second on our calculator and then hit graph, it's also going to pull up the table. And this is just another way of checking your work. If I go into my calculator, -2, -2, 0, that's one of my solutions here. And then if I arrow down, hey, there we go, 7 and 0. So that's my other solution, and those are the two numbers that I got, so 7 and -2. And those should both pop up with zeros next to them because they are the solutions. And we're just using that zero product property to solve all these problems. In your notes, back on the star, that is what we're working with on all these problems right now. It's the zero product property. And by doing the zero product property, we're finding all of the solutions for all of these equations. So my solutions on number 5 were 7 and -2. That's where it passed the x-axis. Let's move ahead to number 6. This will be our last one that we look at, where we have to go through and factor in the way that we've done numbers 4 and 5. So we go through, again, when we factor, we need two quantities. So I'm going to go ahead and lay out my parentheses. The only thing you can multiply together to get p is going to be p times p to get p squared. And now I need to break up -20 into two things. When multiplied, give me -20. And those two numbers, when they're added together, this is really a 1. So whenever you add those together, you get a positive 1. And those two things, when I break them apart, are going to be p plus 5 and p minus 4. Just kind of as a quick review real quick, because it has been a couple weeks since we looked into this. Again, if you want to check this to make sure that it's correct, I can do p plus 5, p minus 4. I can use FOIL to go through here. So with FOIL, first, outer, inner, last, so my first term, p squared. My outside terms, minus 4p. My inside term, plus 5p. And my last term. 5 times -4 is going to be -20. Go through combine like terms. P squared, -4p plus 5p is going to give me plus 1p minus 20. And there we go. Our equations matched up perfect. So I know this is going to be the right factoring for this equation. Go through, set them both equal to 0. So p plus 5 equals 0. P minus 4 equals 0. And then from there, we're going to solve for p. So p is equal to -5, or p is equal to 4. A couple ways you can write your answers on these guys. You can leave them the way we've been doing so far, or kind of a simpler way, kind of breaking it down, we can include some brackets. And your solutions are going to be -5 and 4. It's always nice whenever you do it the bracket way, just because it simplifies it a little bit, and there's not so much going on. But also when you do this, to leave them in numerical order, so from least to greatest. Alright, let's get through 3 more problems, and then we'll call it a day. Excuse me, 2 more problems, and we'll call it a day. So let's look at number 7. Number 7 is a little different than what we've been working with. So I have 4x squared minus 21x equals 18. On this problem, it's not equal to 0 like it is on our other problems. We need to change that. We need to put it into what we call standard form. And standard form, go ahead and write that in our notes, is nothing but that quadratic equation that you should have put in your notes back at the beginning of this lesson. So that ax squared plus bx plus c equals 0. We want to put number 7 in this exact same form as standard form. Well, it's very close because my ax squared, I have my bx, now I'm just missing my c. And that's an easy fix. I can just move the 18 to the other side. So I have 4x squared minus 21x. I move it to the other side because it's a positive. I need to subtract it. So minus 18 is equal then to 0. And now I have it in standard form, and I can solve this problem very much so like I just did the previous set of problems. I want to factor this into two quantities that equal 0. Whenever I factor this down, I'm going to get the quantities 4x plus 3 and x minus 6. And again, you can do FOIL to kind of check your work and to make sure that you are doing this correctly. I have my A, I have my B. I want to then set these both equal to 0, just like we have been doing. 4x plus 3 equals 0, or x minus 6 equals 0. Go through and solve. On the left, I'm going to get 4x is equal to negative 3. I divide by 4. X is equal to negative 3/4. Or, when A is 0, I have x is equal to 6. So these are my two solutions. So a couple ways. We have negative 3/4, comma 6, or you could write it out. Solutions are negative 3/4 and 6. I don't want to confuse anyone, guys. The reason we're putting or again is because if A is 0, then the solution is 6. If B is 0, then the solution is negative 3/4. And we have those two solutions because that parabola crosses the x-axis in two spots. So that's why you should have two answers. Excuse me. Our last problem, number 8. X squared plus 14x equals negative 49. This is probably another good one to pause the video, try it on your own, and then you can unpause and we can compare answers and see how you did. Alright, so let's take a look at this one. X squared plus 14x. I need to get it into standard form, so I need to move the 49 to the other side. So I'm going to add it to the other side because it's a subtraction symbol. I want to do the opposite to get it over. So add it, set it equal to 0. From there, we're going to factor, just like we've done on the last, about 4 problems. So I need two quantities equal to 0. X squared only breaks down into x and x. I need to break down 49. It's going to actually come out, guys, to x plus 7 and x plus 7. We should remember that from our last chapter, this is really the same thing as x plus 7 squared. Now, when this is the case, and you have the same quantity squared, your A and your B, when you put them equal to 0, because it's the same thing and they're squared, they're also going to be the same thing. So you can go through up here and do x plus 7 equals 0 and x plus 7 equals 0. But notice it's the exact same thing. So you really only need to do it once. So I'm going to do x plus 7 equals 0 one time. So I know x is going to be equal to negative 7. So for this type of problem, we're actually only going to have just x equals negative 7. And to kind of show you what that looks like on your graph, let me go ahead and pull it up here. Oh, it helps if you put the right sign in. That way it pops up with the right graph. To show you what that looks like on your graph, when you type this into your y equals and you end up with x squared plus 14x plus 49, when you go to graph, notice how the parabola, it only touches the x-axis at this one spot. And it touches it at that x equals negative 7. We come into that second graph, you look in your table, negative 7, you have a 0 next to it. Notice that on negative 8 it's 1 and negative 6 it's 1. That means your parabola to the left of negative 7 is going up, and to the right of negative 7 it's also going up. And you can see that on the actual graph. So that means the parabola dips and it hits that minimum, that lowest point at that negative 7, 0 point. Which means it's only going to touch the x-axis one time, which means you're only going to have one solution. And that is indeed what we found, where x equals negative 7. So do not be alarmed, or don't be scared, if you do get something that comes out to be a quantity squared, and you do end up with one solution, because it is very much possible. Guys, that's all for today. I hope you enjoyed the video. Leave me some feedback. Let me know what you think. Let me know if it helped you out at all. And we will pick this up in our next session. If you have any questions, shoot me an email. Thanks, guys. Nice seeing you.